Good day, everyone. We are Group 7 and we are tasked to discuss Module 7, which is all about OBE or Outcomes Based Education. I am Lovelyn Gutierrez together with Shasnay Danyo. We will be discussing Lesson 1, while for Lesson 2, it will be facilitated by Ms. Rowena Kahulugan, Jocelyn Cadaves, and Mr. Roy Dikdikan. Let's get started. Hello, aspiring educators. Let's start the discussion for Lesson 1, which is about OBE for Teacher Preparation Curriculum. As an overview, OBE became the fundamental philosophy of higher education in the country lately. All curricula, including that of teacher education, is anchored on the concept of OBE in terms of course designing, instructional planning, teaching, and assessing students' learning. This module will help us understand what OBE is all about and relate the same to teacher education curriculum, which will help us future educators. After the discussion, we'll be able to learn and understand the following. What is OBE? Second, we'll be able to identify the 4 principles in OBE. Third, we'll be able to describe how teaching and learning relate to OBE. Fourth, we'll be able to understand how assessment of achieved learning relate to OBE. And lastly, we'll be able to know the learner's responsibility in learning through OBE. So what is outcome-based education? There are several definitions of OBE, but we'll be focusing on psychologist and sociologist William Spady, who define OBE as focusing and organizing a school's entire programs and instructional efforts around the clear defined goals or outcomes we want our students to demonstrate when they leave school. Which means OBE is standard of education, which is centered on goals or outcomes. The goal of the teacher or institution is shift from focusing and completing the syllables or books for the entire school year to the achievement of learning outcomes that we have set for them. Unlike the traditional education, OBE is focused on the outcomes, not the inputs. When we say inputs, it's the number of hours that we spend in class or the textbooks that are provided. While outcomes, on the other hand, may include a range of skills and knowledge that should be concretely measurable, and the writing of our learning objective will come into play. Our goals or objectives should be specific, measurable, attainable by the students, result-oriented or relevant, and it should be time-bound. Next topics will be discussed by Ms. Shasnay Danyo. Thank you.
Alright, so to continue the discussion, we have here the difference between OBE or the outcomes-based education and the traditional education. So in OBE, curriculum will relate to the needs of the students, while in traditional education, it is passed on from generation to generation. Moving on in teaching process, OBE focused on helping the students reach their goals, give them more motivations or options to achieve their goals, while in traditional education, it only focuses on completing the syllabus. We also have here for the OBE assessment, it is based on the levels to track the students' learning skills, while in traditional education, assessment knowledge is based for grades that is obtained coming from the students. Next will be teaching and learning in OBE. First is teacher must prepare the learners adequately. So this can be done if the teachers know what the students want to learn or need to learn and what will be the learning outcomes that will be achieved. Second is teacher must create a positive learning environment. So students should feel that regardless of individual uniqueness, teacher is always there to help. Teacher and students relationship is very important. though it must have a limitations when it comes to closeness between the teacher and the students. The classroom atmosphere should provide respect for diverse kind of learners since the students have different kinds of learning process. Third is teachers must help their students to understand. So students should know what they have learned, what they should learn, and when will it be used, if it will be used right now or in the near future, and how will they know that they have learned. Fourth is teacher must use a variety of methods. So the most appropriate strategy should be used on taking into account the learning outcomes for the teachers want the students to achieve. We have to consider the contents, the characteristics of the students, the resources that is available, and the teaching skills of the teacher. Fifth is teacher must provide enough opportunities to use the new knowledge and skills they gain. So when students do this, they can explore with new learning, correct mistakes, and adjust their thinking. Application of learning is encouraged than mere accumulation of these learnings. And lastly, teachers must help students to bring each learning a personal closure that will make them aware of what they have learned. Okay, so moving on guiding principles of assessment in the OBE system or the outcomes-based education system. First is assessment procedure should be valid. Second, assessment should be reliable. And third, assessment should be fair. Next is assessment procedure should reflect the knowledge that are important to the students. Fifth is assessment should tell progress to both the teacher and the student. So for progressing the knowledge, both teacher and students have to tell their progress, okay? For the next guidelines is assessment should support every student's opportunity to learn things that are important. Seventh, assessment should allow individuality or uniqueness to be demonstrated. And lastly, assessment should be comprehensive to cover a wide range of learning outcomes. So what are the learner's responsibility in learning through OBE? In OBE, students are responsible for their own learning and progress. Even though the teacher does their best for the students to learn, if the student is not interested at all, they will not learn. It is only the learner himself or herself who can drive himself to learn. So the students can only convince himself or herself to learn the lesson, no matter what the teachers do. Okay, so teachers can only facilitate, as I've said earlier, that learning and assist the students to achieve those outcomes, and in this way they will be able to know whether they are learning or not. So that's all for my topic. Next will be lesson 2 to be discussed by Miss Rowena Kahulugan, Jocelyn Cadavis, and Roy Dikdikan.
Good day, everyone. I am Rowena A. Kahulugan. Today, we will going to report Module 7, Lesson 2, Enhanced Teacher Education Curriculum Anchored on Outcome-Based Education, with my co-reporters Miss Jocelyn Cadaves and Sir Roy Dikdikan. So, let's start.
The desired learning outcomes. First, analyze the influence of OBE in the teacher education curriculum. Second, reflected on the future teacher education curriculum in the light of OBE. As teacher education curriculum initiatives gear towards globalization, contextualization, indigenization, other forms or enhancements, a lot of harmonization is being done by educators, curriculum specialists, faculty, teachers, students, and all stakeholders. Outcome-based education as a philosophy, system, and classroom practice gives a very strong signal in the reconceptualization of the teacher education curriculum. Let us learn how a teacher education curriculum embraces the philosophy, system, and classroom practice of OBE. There are four questions in teacher education curriculum anchored on OBE. What could be a teacher education curriculum that anchors itself on outcome-based education? What would be the features of this curriculum that could address and future concerns of basic education? What competencies must one acquire to be able to address these concerns? How will these competencies enhance the attributes of a teacher education graduate? These questions and many more shall be addressed in the content of this lesson. 1. Desired outcomes of the teacher education programs or ideal graduate of teacher education program competencies. Questions like, what kind of teacher do we desire to graduate in the future? What kind of teacher will you be? What qualities will you possess? To address these questions, it is necessary that the desired competencies and outcomes of the teacher education curriculum be clearly stated. These competencies will guide teacher education programs on what product do they desire at the end of the college education. What are the attributes of the ideal graduate? Recognizing the demand of K-12, the framework of the National Competency-Based Teacher Standards or NCBTS and global requirements of ASEAN 2015, a need to harmonize the teacher competencies is very critical. With OBE, these competencies will form the desired outcomes of the teacher education program. With the current imperatives of the 21st century, the teacher education curriculum must emphasize teachers' values, skills, and knowledge that are fundamental to good teaching. The roles and responsibilities of teachers should be viewed collaboratively with other professionals because of new job opportunities. Teachers may not remain in the classrooms but may take on tasks as course designers, program evaluators, training specialists, and others, which are also related to teaching. So let's move on. Competencies for all future teachers in the teacher education curriculum. It is desired that all graduates for any teacher education program should have the following competencies to be ready to teach in the classroom. Here are the suggestions based on CMO 30 Series 2004 and the NCBTS. 1. Demonstrate basic and higher levels of literacy for teaching and learning. This means that the person who graduated from the teacher education program is knowledgeable in the teaching and learning process. 2. Demonstrate deep and principled understanding of the teaching and learning process. This shows that they have mastery and complete understanding of how the teaching and learning process works. 3. Master and apply subject matter content and pedagogical principles appropriate for teaching and learning. Since they understood and mastered the teaching and learning process, then they will be able to successfully apply this in their own teaching. It is important that they use the proper teaching and learning method for the subject matter or content that they have chosen. Number 4. Apply a wide range of teaching-related skills in curriculum development, instructional material production, learning assessment, and teaching delivery. This shows that when we graduate, we must be innovative. We are well-versed in a wide range of teaching-related skills that will help us in acting out our responsibilities as future educators. 5. articulate and apply clear understanding of how educational processes relate to political, historical, social, and cultural context. In number 5, we can relate the educational process to matters in our environment. As future teachers, we are able to see the effect of these aspects in relation to education. Next, number 6. Facilitate learning in various classroom setting diverse learners coming from different cultural backgrounds. It shows that a teacher does not support discrimination. They must treat their students equally. 7. Experience direct field and clinical activities in the teaching milieu as an observer, teaching assistant, or practice teachers. This means that the person who graduated by the teacher education program should have undergone a teacher assistant, observer, and or a practice teacher. This experiential learning will help them see the gist of a teaching world that will further prepare them in their line of work. Number 8. Create and innovate alternative teaching approaches to improve student learning. As I said earlier, the teacher must be innovative and find different ways that will encourage their students to learn. 9. Practice professional and ethical standards for teachers anchored for both local and global perspectives. They must conform to the standards mandated by law, which can be seen in the Code of Ethics. And 10. Pursue continuously lifelong learning for personal and professional growth as teachers. We know that learning never stops, especially for future teachers. We should love learning and love the acquisitions of knowledge. Continue to learn. This will help us grow personally and thus we can influence others to do so. In this line of work, it is important that we give way to professional growth. Newly graduates or in the field teachers may enroll in colleges offering masteral and doctoral degrees that will help them in the promotion of a teacher. These 10 competencies are set at the beginning your degree plan. You must put this to heart so that you go along. You will be able to master this in 4 years and will be ready to be employed after you get your teacher license. Next, using the national competency-based standards as a frame. As a global Filipino teacher, let us analyze the intended competencies or outcomes that are addressed by the different NCBTA's domains or TCSE Progress Report 2013. Teacher Standards Outcomes and the domains addressed in NCBTS. Uses specialized knowledge and skill in a variety of school contexts and in diverse students' background. The domains: diversity of learners, learning environment, curriculum. Applies inquiry with the use of research approaches and utilize evidence-based knowledge to improve teaching. Diversity of learners, planning, assessing and reporting, personal growth and professional development, social regard for learning. Self-directs continuous learning related to own expertise for enhancement of students' outcomes and strengthening of professional identity. Personal growth and professional development, social regard for learning. Maximize the involvement of education stakeholder and non-education communities to work in collaboration for relevant educational reforms. Community linkages. From the identified competencies, standards, and outcomes, the ideal graduate of the teacher education program as a new breed of teachers are multiliterate, reflective, master subject content, highly skilled, sensitive to issue, multicultural, innovative, highly professional, and lifelong learner.
Good day everyone, I'm Jocelyn Cadaves. So to continue the Module 7 Lesson 2, which is the Enhanced Teacher Education Curriculum anchored on OBE, or the Outcomes-Based Education. So the first one has already been discussed and mentioned by Ms. Rowena Kahulugan. So I'll be discussing the second one, which is the Teacher Education Curriculum, an example. So the question here is, what kind of teacher education curriculum can develop such competencies in colleges of education or teacher education departments? So using the OBE framework, the competencies previously stated are now translated into outcomes. So these are the outcomes we need to see in every graduate. Teacher Education Program Outcomes. At the end of the degree plan for elementary or secondary teaching, the future teacher must have demonstrated basic and higher levels of literacy for teaching and learning. The second one, demonstrated deep and principled understanding of the teaching and learning process. Third one, mastered and applied the subject matter content and pedagogical principles appropriate for teaching and learning. The next one is applied a wide range of teaching-related skills in curriculum development, instructional material production, learning assessment, and teaching delivery. The next one is the articulated and applied clear understanding of how educational processes relate to political, historical, social, and cultural context. The next one, facilitated learning in various classroom settings, diverse learners coming from different cultural backgrounds. The next one is that experience direct field and clinical activities in the teaching milieu as an observer, teaching assistant, or a practice teacher. The next one is the created and innovated alternative teaching approaches to improve student learning. Then, practice professional and ethical standards for teachers anchored for both local and global perspectives. Then the last one is pursued continuously lifelong learning for personal and professional growth as teachers. So, kailangan gyud nga continuous ang learning nato as teachers. So, content and pedagogy to achieve outcomes. So, to become a teacher in the near future, you must finish a course or a degree content. To become a teacher, a course degree is required, wherein a degree is made up of courses, majors, and specialized subject courses. Let us look at these examples. So, elementary level teaching from K to grade 6. For secondary level, teaching grade 7 to grade 10. For secondary level, teaching grade 11 to grade 12, senior high. So as you notice, there are similarities as well as the differences in the required numbers of subjects and courses that are recommended for both teachers in elementary and secondary, but also they different to address its context based on the grade level they're going to teach. For all the future teachers in K-12, both elementary and secondary levels, here are the probable subjects in the professional teacher education. Probable subjects in the professional teacher education. First, we have the foundation courses, child and adolescent learners and learning principles, the teacher and the society, the teaching profession, school culture and organizational, school leadership, community linkages, foundations of special and inclusive education, followed by pedagogical content knowledge courses, which is facilitating learner-centered teaching and learning, assessment of learning, technology for teaching and learning, the teacher and the school curriculum, building and enhancing literacy skills across the curriculum, content and pedagogy of the mother tongue, which is for elementary level only, teaching the major field subjects, which is for secondary level only. And the third one is major courses for the secondary and selected subject area, content for the elementary. Lastly, the experiential learning courses, field study courses, field observations, practice teaching or classroom or observation, teaching assistance or the full immersion. These subjects are coherent and integrated with one another to create and achieve almost seamless experience of learning to teach, wherein it brings together theory into practice, faculty teaching the content, supervised student teachers in the field. Allowing students to learn from the experts in the field will help them to enhance their collaborative relationship with the students at school. Let's proceed to the next content and pedagogy, which is to be discussed by Mr. Roy Dican. Thank you and have a good day.
There you go. Okay, good afternoon everyone. Tasking about to continue the part of the content and pedagogy to achieve the outcomes. So there are three. First, course of degree content reported by Ms. Cadaves, and method of teaching and teaching methods, delivery methods, assessment of learning. Okay, as to continue, so the second is the method of teaching and teaching delivery modes. The method of teaching should be varied to address the different kinds of learners. Time tested. Also, methods as well as current emerging strategies shall be utilized, and these should be student-centered, interactive, integrative, and transformative. So this teachings delivery modes be based the student, how them to interact, how them to integrate it, and how the knowledge or teaching skills or methods that we're going to discuss to transfer to our learners. So by that, the delivery modes may vary from the traditional face-to-face, online, experiential learning approaches. When these modalities are combined in our course, it is called blended approach. So meaning, dili lamang kay sa face-to-face ang learning nato nga ma-achieve ngadto sa atong students, which is pwede pod sa online sama sa atong gibuhat karon. Nag-online class ta, same gihapon ang output nato ani, which is to receive or to maka-learn ta based sa atong mga instructors or as na to teachers nga ma-learn ng atong mga students. So dili hindrance ang nahitabo na to karon nga pandemic nga mo end ang learning sa mga estudyante kaya naghapon laing paagi which is ang online. Then in addition, the use of technology for teaching and learning in all subject areas is encouraged so that every future teacher will develop the skills to be ready to guide future learners mas whom are digitally skilled. So, dapat ana in terms of technology dapat aware ang atong kita mga students soon to be teachers para pohon ato pud ning magamit kay wa pa ta kahibaw sa panahon pud ron ongoing pa ang pandemic. So dapat aware tana. Then a very strong field-based experience in teacher education where pre-service teacher students are immersed to the actual classroom is necessary. This will be enable the students to gain experiential learning through observation, teaching, assistantship, and practice. So given nga every students nga mokuha jud og course as teachers, so naa gyud ang pre-service nga subject nga dapat jud ma-experience nato makita nato ma-hands-on ta sa actual kung unsa jud ang situation kung unsa jud ang actual scenario based kung na face to face ngadto sa atong students. Then based po sa atong mga experience dapat nato experience yung asa tadapit kamao asa tadapit ma-enhance pa based sa atong mga learning plan sa atong gihimo nga lesson plan. Kinahanglan po ng atong mga assistants sa orang atong teachers nga mo-observe during sa atong pre-service. Then the last part of the content pedagogy teaching the outcomes. So ang last ang assessment of learning. So college learning shall be assessed in similar manner as all other means of assessment. It has to be remembered that in the Philippines Qualification Framework or PQF, there are 3 levels of competencies that all undergraduate students should possess as evidence of their learning outcomes. So, example ni ini in subject curriculum development, desired course outcomes. So at the end of the semester dapat ang atong student mao ning ilang ma-achieve. First, there are 7 first identified curriculum concept that include the nature and purpose of curriculum. Then second, discuss the different models of curriculums and approaches to curriculum design. Then ang ikatulo, explain curriculum development in terms of planning, implementing, and evaluating. Then ang fourth, describe the different involvement of stakeholders in curriculum implementation. Fifth, utilize different evaluation procedures and tools in assessment of learning outcomes. Ikaw, explain examples of curriculum reforms such as K-12 and OBE or outcome-based education. And then sa last, ikapito, reflect on the value of understanding curriculum development as a teacher. So to sum up this content and pedagogy of methods, so there are 3, which is the planning, implementing, and evaluating. So in summary of the teacher's education curriculum, that approach, the OBE or outcome-based education model for classroom practice, begins with the ends in view by establishing the program outcomes at the start. It is followed by the course content, pedagogy, and assessment. So there are three components na dapat nga link gadyon ni siya. So unang planning, degree outcomes and attributes of an ideal graduate, implementing contents, methods of delivery, and last, evaluating or the assessment of learning to indicate if degree outcomes have been achieved. So by implementing, first, so naa diha ang atong planning. So naa diha ang atong himuon nga lesson plan kung unsay dapat nato mahatag sa atong mga students, kung unsay atong ideal nila ini-graduate na nila pohon. Then sa implementing, based sa katong imong gihimo nga lesson plan, mo to siya atong implement based sa objectives sa content ngadto nga dapat nato ma-achieve sa atong learner. Then evaluating, then nato i-assess if ang atong pag-implement based sa atong planning na bagajoy achievement. Short of measure po nato ni sa atong student kung asa ang ilang learning. Then so far maura tayo akong mo-discuss all about sa continuation sa content and pedagogy of teachers. So thank you for listening and have a good day everyone.